Welcome everyone to my first official YouTube debunking video. My name is Rose Kai, or Rose for short, and this is the leading cardinal of my arc, so if you're new, please feel invited to subscribe for more in-depth debunking content on this platform. As promised, I will be debunking 24 components of one overall program, of which promote and advertise the perception that Saitama triumphs over Goku, created by JoshInspires, the renowned Fallacy Man. I would like to add the disclaimer that the Fallacy Man and I do not hate each other, we simply disagree on this versus battle matchup. Therefore, do not send him hate. He's a cool dude overall, a little bit annoying sometimes, but that's besides the point and does not apply to the argument. Enough time wasted, let the debunking begin.
Now we've already established that Saitama is at least planetary without even trying.
Saitama is in fact only multi-continental as highlighted in the manga. Arguments such as planetary or even star are unequivocally false. The webcomic and manga are the highest construct of canon material, meaning statements from the anime are liable to contradiction from such. As drawn in the manga, Boros stated he would blow away the planet's surface, therefore the appropriate tier bestowed in regards to such feat is multi-continental. And the belief that Saitama is a starbuster is the result of the invalid reasoning via name fallacy illustrated in the guidebook, which is further retconned due to the secondary information holding none to the official narrative via the debt to the author fallacy.
On top of the fact that he's never had to try in a fight at all.
Now, using the assertion that one character is not trying in the attempt to create enhancement of extrapolated power, in this case would be to say Saitama can one-punch anyone, is a violation of invalid reasoning, more specifically a no-limits fallacy. The no-limits fallacy can be defined as the illogical notion that a phenomenon is multiplied to an infinite degree without a threshold.
That's not even including the fact that he's a gag character. Don't believe me?
Nope!
Watch this video, here's the artist and creator literally saying that he's a gag character. If you don't accept Saitama as a gag character, even though your opinion doesn't matter because the author said that he's a gag character.
Now, the use of Murata's statements are objectively null and void. For one, Murata is not the author nor the creator that the Fallacy Man depicts him to be.
Here's the artist and creator. Because the author said that
Murata is merely an artist or an editor who in fact is typically kept in the dark from canon plot. This is because in an interview Murata stated that all comments of his on One Punch Man are merely his opinions and not official settings. In addition, I will provide a link to an interview where it depicts Murata's surprise when one informs him of common things that Murata was not told of, which supports Murata's own claim that his comments are not official settings. This contradicts all comments concerning One Punch Man that were made by Murata, unless specifically stated that Murata talked with one on such specific canon setting. This creates a barrier from all illogical assumptions that Murata's claims are true without proper evidence. And even then, this specific article Mr. Fallacy Man utilizes does not prove Saitama is a gag due to the fact the term parody character is also referenced. Let me highlight the word in question, or. The answer does not provide constructive evidence to both, meaning such as either one or must be proven to be both. Saitama has already been proven to be a parody, meaning this scan can be dismissed in its entirety as any claim that Saitama is a gag or both through the evidence provided lepers the burden of proof fallacy. The predominant way to prove Saitama is not a gag character is through the anti-gag narrative itself. One example can be given during the heavily emotional episodes of the aftermath of the meteor destroying the city. Saitama had to deal with the consequences of his actions, which led to a deep emotional scene. This type of display and performance contradicts the argument of a gag in its entirety. For example, if such was a true gag, then the city would have been destroyed entirely, Saitama would have said something ironic or comedic, and then the next scene everything would be fine. But no, it was the exact opposite of that. However, to be fair, that's easily debunkable by using a long versus short consequence concept. Therefore, the best way you can debunk Saitama being a gag character, as I stated previously, is through the anti-gag narrative. Such narrative illustrates a serious, genuine, and continuous plot that focuses on the character development of secondary side characters, for example, the Heroes Association. This retcons any statement made by Murata and even one himself via the debt to the author fallacy. For instance, a parallel example would be like if J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, stated that Harry Potter had pink hair, did not have a scar, and wasn't a wizard. That would be contradicted by the plot. Death to the author. Now, I would like to take a couple of minutes debunking Saitama's abilities as a gag. Mr. Fallacy Man reached out to me and sent me screenshots of what he believed proves Saitama to be a gag character, of which in addition he recorded and published a video with the exact same points. Now, first off, these two screenshots are from a wiki, meaning it's not 100% factual, therefore non-essential. And even then, I could argue that the term gag type equates to solely the comedic genre. Two, in turn, I would enact the Hitchens razor, which is defined as what can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, as well as invoking the burden of proof fallacy, which shall fall on top of Mr. Fallacy Man, resulting in a dismissal of such scan. However, just for argument's sake, we'll agree with Mr. Fallacy Man, who argues that Saitama is a gag character whose gag is that he can one-punch any of his opponents. More simply put, Saitama will always have a higher AP than the antagonist. Now, the problem with that statement is that Saitama's gag does not extend outside of his verse. An opposing argument to such claim leverage the burden of proof, combined that I enact a Hitchin's razor, resulting in Mr. Fallacy Man to prove that Saitama and Saitama's gag specifically affects outside of the One Punch Man verse. I know what you might be thinking, but Rose, didn't Arale's gag apply to the Dragon Ball verse? And this is actually exactly the hypothetical provided to me by Mr. Fallacy Man himself. To answer, yes, it did, and that's only because both mangas are licensed by the same author. Toriyama can do whatever he wants with the characters and plot he has created, but that doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants with the characters he is not licensed to own or borrow. Same thing with Marvel and Squirrel Girl. Essentially, the limits, rules, and laws created by the author are limited to only the verses and characters they have created or are officially borrowing from. In other words, because the One Punch Man author does not apply to other verses other than the ones he has created, Saitama cannot one-punch characters outside of his verse. To twist Saitama's gag into a he can one-shot anything when the author does not possess all knowledge of all verses would invoke a violation of the no limits fallacy as well as leverage the burden of proof. The same goes with another screenshot Mr. Fallacy Man employed, which states that Saitama has become strong enough to defeat all enemies with one punch. All enemies insinuates the antagonist within Saitama's verse. And to twist this scan into the support of Saitama's gag affecting outside verses to promote the idea that he can one-punch anyone would be a violation of invalid reasoning via the no limits fallacy.
Since I've been told countless times by Goku fans who tell me over and over that I'm using the no limits fallacy, but then they turn around and say that Goku has no limits because of his Saiyan blood DNA, blah blah blah, whatever.
The potential of power is not equivalent to actual power. Meaning having no limits to grow is not the same as having no limits of power. They are two separate things. Goku does not have infinite power because of his bloodline, however he does have infinite potential just like Saitama. The fact Mr. Fallacy Man doesn't know the philosophy behind the fallacies personally makes me question if he actually knows what he's talking about.
Being able to take the gravitational force of a black hole like it's nothing, meaning that Saitama was not only breaking the laws of physics, like the gag character he is, but was able to surpass the laws of physics and move beyond the pull of the black hole, making him at least faster than light without even trying. That's using scientific standards of physics, and I just proved that Saitama's faster than light without even having to use the moon example.
That entire feat isn't canon.
Saitama's limitless strength is also shown when he enters Boros' chamber, and Boros exclaims to himself,
"この星の代表が計り知れないエネルギーを感じる."
Now, the keyword I would like to emphasize is I. Relatively weak characters are consistently unable to quantify the strength of someone stronger than them. Therefore, deductively, we can deduce that Saitama's energy is above Boros' comprehension. This, however, does not mean Saitama is planetary or above compared to multi-continental due to his strength being unquantifiable via lack of feats. Any argument through this statement, such as Saitama holding power capable of destroying more than a planet or star at maximum, is a violation of invalid reasoning via the no limits fallacy due to a headcanon assumption. I'd like to stop here for a moment to inform you all that this video created by Mr. Fallacy Man is all over the place, meaning his statements typically build off of previous claims that I will have already debunked. Think of it as Mr. Fallacy Man built a building on top of a single block and the action of removing that block would tumble the entire building. Basically what I'm saying is, if I don't go over one of the points he makes in his video from here on out, it's because I've already debunked the structure of his argument, resulting in me invalidating it entirely.
Now when I say the name One Punch Man referring to the anime, webcomic, and manga, I'm not saying that because it's called One Punch Man, that he is One Punch Man.
I'm saying that given all of this context, all of his feats.
For those claiming name fallacy, as I just explained, it's not because the anime is called One Punch Man that he is One Punch Man. It's because he is One Punch Man that the name is called One Punch Man.
For example, it's not called Batman because he is a man.
This entire segment of the video is not essential. The entire point of a violation via name fallacy is using one's title to benefit the argument. It's not whether or not this character is named some way, it's whether or not someone uses it and believing it is valid reasoning. For example, if I was arguing that Beerus, the god of destruction, can destroy everything because he has the title of god of destruction, that would be invalid reasoning via name fallacy. Which is identical to the way Mr. Fallacy Man used it when delegating an analysis as to the show being called One Punch Man because he believes Saitama can one-punch anything. It is the action of applying irrational information when unnecessary that is the violation via the name fallacy.
Also, when I say Saitama is always holding back, here's what I mean.
Again, expendable segment, a character holding back does not quantify specific strength. You can say Saitama's holding back all you want, but using such a comment to justify the power to an infinite degree, more specifically, he can one-punch anyone or anything, is undoubtedly a violation of invalid reasoning via the no limits fallacy.
Him not breathing in space isn't the thing you should be worried about. You should be worried about the fact that he doesn't just straight up die and suffocate in the vacuum of space as all the gases are forced out of his system due to the lack of pressure. Oh, wait. That doesn't happen because the laws of physics don't apply to him.
The premise that Saitama didn't die in the vacuum of space wasn't because the laws of physics do not apply to him. For example, he is still bound by gravity, and Mr. Fallacy Man even contradicts himself since he has also confirmed that Saitama can't breathe in space. But that's besides the point. Using the concoction that Saitama is not affected by ebilism is the application of appealing to our own universe to argue for the absurdity of a fictional universe where the author cannot be reasonably expected to know of such conclusion that is drawn. Such as the violation of the reality fallacy, or better known as appealing to reality.
If you accept that Arale beats Captain America, why can't Saitama's gags also be used in fights as proof of why he would beat other characters?
Because when using gag characters who do not apply to other verses, their gag is removed, however their feats remain. Saitama has only demonstrated multi-continental AP, therefore removing his gag would keep him at multi-continental level. Personally, I don't find that hard to understand, but to make my claim broader and clearer, when putting gags into versus battles outside of their licensed verse, you can only use past feats as their gag does not apply.
Let me just quickly explain why the no limits fallacy isn't a fallacy and doesn't really work. I'll illustrate this point with an example. This is Bob. Bob is literally limitless. He can do anything, anywhere, anytime, anyhow, doesn't matter. I created him, I can dictate this, no matter how you feel about this, Bob is literally limitless. The no limits fallacy doesn't work on him because he literally doesn't have a limit.
So for one, he committed a fallacy in his attempt to debunk a fallacy. The no limits fallacy is applied when the character is stated to have no limit, or only certain limits, because it has not been demonstrated to have any limits or only those certain limits. And as the creator of Bob, Mr. Fallacy Man's statement wouldn't hold true because he does not possess all knowledge of all verses, which violates either the no limits fallacy or the death to the author fallacy. But let me show you why you need the no limits fallacy. Without the no limits fallacy, statements would be blown out of proportion. For instance, without such fallacy, I could simply highlight that Krillin is stated to be the strongest human, and because the no limits fallacy applies to cross-verse, without it in place, Krillin would therefore scale above Saitama, and Goku scales above Krillin, so Goku over Saitama.
Goku didn't hakai Jiren, case in point. But Josh, Goku didn't hakai Jiren because insert whatever reason here.
Well, my reason is because Goku in the anime doesn't have the ability to use hakai. Manga Goku does. Goku used it on Merge Zamasu, who scales above him, meaning that hakai can work on stronger beings. Now let me educate you on hakai. Hakai is, in the most basic definition, destruction ki or destructive energy. Stronger beings than the user can negate it with their own ki. Meaning, for example, a god of destruction can be hakai'd if they are unaware. This can be proven during the Toppo vs Vegeta fight, or even when Frieza managed to negate and control a small portion of Sidra's destructive ki when he was ambushed.
Oh, JoshInspires, the versus battle master. You think you're so smart, huh?
Who the hell are you?
I'm Rosie Kaioken times infinity, cause that's how strong Goku is.
This last portion of the video was basically Mr. Fallacy Man imitating me, and I must say it was just about one of the funniest things I've ever seen. The whole point of the skit was him attempting to debunk a claim that I made about gag plot. I've already referenced the anti-gag narrative, so that kind of debunks the entire 4 to 5 minutes of the skit, but I highly recommend you watch it because it's hilarious. To be fair, he was debunking a vague claim I made. Clearly, because of the time limit TikTok gives me, I couldn't go into depth about what I meant by plot, so it's understandable as to why he created the skit in the first place. Overall, the video as a whole could possibly be considered to commit the argumentum ad verbosum fallacy, due to the repetitive claims being drawn out of proportion, as in creating a complex infrastructure in place of a simple claim. You could probably compare the video to a long essay that intentionally phrased complex answers to basic questions, or an essay that needed to fit a specific word limit that he just didn't hit. But it's whatever, I had fun debunking it, which was the whole point. The editing was a lot harder than I expected, so props to him for that. And remember to subscribe if you feel like it. My other social medias will be listed below with a direct link to such, so follow them to interact with me more frequently. Ciao.